Dana White, he was the main promoter for Canelo Alvarez versus Terence Crawford on Netflix a couple of weeks ago. It was still a very weird sight. It was a very weird sight at that event, seeing how grand an event it was, really, in the grand scheme of things. Such a big fight, all that. And not seeing a Bob Arum, an Eddie Hearn, a Frank Warren, an Oscar De La Hoya. You're just so used to seeing, in particular, those four guys at these big events, because they have been the quintessential, boxing promoters over the last decade and a half, maybe even, well, Frank Warren's case, I mean, geez, you're going back to what, the 90s, 80s, thereabouts, Bob Arum even the 60s, so they are part and parcel of boxing, they really are. So it was weird seeing Dana White there as the main guy. You're used to seeing him at UFC. Well, Dana White's Zuffa Boxing, to employ new ring design, don't know how you're going to do that, potential new rules, and more. This is now with him landing a deal with Paramount. It says here, and I quote, this is from Sports Illustrated. UFC President Dana White announced he will be taking the leap into the world of boxing as the chief promoter of Canelo vs. Crawford in September. Not done in the sport, White is set to launch his Zuffa Boxing League in 2026. The league has already understood the focus on prospects as opposed to ready-made stars such as Canelo and Crawford. White's venture is to also associate with Turki Al-Sheikh and The Ring magazine. Although no shows have currently been announced for the new promotion in boxing, White did confirm some details in a recent interview. It says Dana White is planning on shaking up boxing in 2026 with noticeable changes to the sport. Many fans have speculated what boxing might look like under the UFC President White, with some feeling it may be similar. It may be a similar format to the MMA. Really, it is MMA, not UFC. MMA promotion. Zuffa Boxing is confirmed to be broadcast on Paramount Plus in the US in 2026, the same platform that UFC will be shown on from next year onward. White said in the past that the ranking system for the boxing promotion will resemble UFC. White also told CBS Sports that the boxing entity is currently developing the design for the new ring, working on new designs for the ring. I don't know if you noticed, we had LED lights around the ring for Canelo versus Crawford. I certainly didn't, but it was 6 a.m. when it was meant to start at 4 a.m. And LED lights. Listen, if that's the height you're going to go to, I'm all for it. Didn't even notice the LED. That's the first time I've known they were even there, reading it there. The UFC promoter also hinted that there may be planning some changes for the boxing rules as well as the ring design. When speaking on how his boxing league may differ from already existing promotions, White said, we will bring a lot of different elements to the production, possibly even rule changes. I wouldn't say no to that. White went on to add that he currently did not have a list of rules he was planning on changing in boxing, but he would be open to that possibility in the future. Another difference White will implement into the sport is that Zuffa Boxing belt, the UFC CEO confirmed on Inside the Ring. However, these belts will not be considered by White to be world titles. White confirmed when asked that fighters who won the Zuffa Boxing belt will be springboarded into opportunities to fight for the ring title and compete on Riyadh season events. This means White will be discarding the WBA, WBO, WBC and IBF world titles in favour of the ring belt. There's seemingly no crossover between White and other promoters such as rivals Eddie Hearn and Oscar De La Hoya. I'm not worried about those other guys, White told CBS Sport. To be honest with you, I don't think those guys think big enough. These guys have been in the business for forever, and I like Eddie Hearn, but I think these guys all think small. They don't think the way I think. That is it. Right, well, listen, right, there's a lot of things to digest in that interview right there. There's a lot of things that have me kind of worried, to be honest with you, when I read it, like changing the ring. Look, if you want to put LEDs around it, okay, like it's not really a big change, but like if you're talking about changing the rules of boxing, like fundamental rules, like I remember Harold Letterman when he used to. Do you remember Harold Letterman at the HBO days? He used to talk. Harold Letterman would always be, even though he would score, okay, Jim, after rounds. I think it was after rounds 3, 7, 9, 12. He'd give his scorecard, but he'd always read the rules and he'd always say, in that New York accent, the Canelo Alvarez Floyd Mayweather fight is scheduled for 12 rounds using the unified rules of the Association of Boxing Commissions. They were always the same rules, more often than not, right? They're the rules of boxing. right? If you're taking and changing them, is this Queensberry boxing? I asked that question. Are these bouts going to be sanctioned bouts? If you are, when I say sanctioned bouts, are they going to be like official boxing? There's a lot of things here that Dana White is talking about that I don't really know if these ideas will transition over to boxing. This isn't me saying that, wishing that Dana White is going to fail or anything like that. No, but I did think when I seen him at the Canelo Crawford show that he seemed a bit disinterested the whole way through. Really, there was no Eddie Hearn or Frank Warren, in particular Eddie Hearn, would tweet, and you'd see him on the phone the odd time at their respective shows. It happens, but there's still an intrigue. You can tell that Eddie Hearn is locked in, he's focused, as is the case with Warren, Arum, etc. For me, it was just like Dana White was just there, just kind of there, like, yeah, this is a nice spectacle. When can we go home? That's what it was like. If you're going to be changing boxing rules, I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't want to shoot it down before it happens. He doesn't have an idea of what he wants to do yet. He has till next year to do it. But I don't like that. To me is just, I don't know. I don't necessarily mind the idea of having like a boxing belt or something like that, because it's not going to be treated as a world title. And when he says stuff like it would give these prospects, and they're, maybe some unknown prospects. And listen, I've said this for the longest time. Up and down the UK, there are small hall shows on every single week where there are fighters paying money to get on these shows to fight a journeyman, hoping for a short notice gig against a prospect on either Eddie Hearn, Matchroom, Frank Warren, GBM. They're hoping for that opportunity. And some of them are juggling day jobs. They're juggling so much all the time that even though they could be tremendously talented and they could be actually losing the fighters that with a proper training camp, they're better than. Josh Padley being a prime example. Look how good he is. Who heard of him until he fought Mark Chamberlain? Very good fighter, and Josh Padley working full time. And look how good he's been since he's been off full time. It's been really, really good for him. So I like what Dana White is doing there, giving the opportunity to guys who, let's be frank, really truly do deserve it. But like, going and getting Ring Magazine titles. The Ring Magazine, that title has always been for number 1 and number 2 in the division. I don't want to see, this is the problem, right? Like, that's what the belt has always stood for. It's always been contested by the best in the division. If you have John Doe, who's done well in this boxing league, why in God's name is he fighting for a Ring Magazine title, or so it would appear here? Hypothetically, let's say Alexander Usyk is still there. No, let's say Alexander Usyk vacates next year. He retires March next year. Belts get fragmented, and you have Moses Itauma versus Joseph Parker. Joseph Parker was WBO champion. Moses Itauma has picked up an IBF title. They're number 1, number 2, respectively. They're going to unify. Where's the Ring Magazine belt? Oh, Big Jimmy from Arkansas, who won this boxing league, he's going to fight for it. What? That's what I mean. I don't like that. I don't mind the idea of going through this league and then getting spots on Riyadh shows. We've seen things like that before. There was that golden contract a couple of years ago. 5-6. Lee Wood was in it, and he lost in it, actually, where it was basically, I think it was a managerial contract or a promotional contract with a company that no longer exists. We all know who that is, right? With a certain somebody, a certain someone who lives in the Middle East, not Turkey, long before he came along. They did that golden contract, and you had people like Tyrone McKenna, O'Hara Davis. You had the likes of, they did it at different weights, and they did one at 126. I remember Jazza Dickens beat Lee Wood in, I think that was it anyway. And this was really for kind of fighters who were on the domestic scene. They weren't really going anywhere, and they were trying to earn said contract to just springboard them, right? And it went from 2019 to 2020. Didn't really do much for the fighters' respective careers. Didn't do much for O'Hara Davis. Didn't do much for, what was his name, Ricardo Bolotniks. He won it at light heavyweight. Forget who won it at featherweight now. Can't remember. But you see what I mean, right? Didn't do a great deal, but they have done things like this before in boxing, where they have like a bit of a league kind of thing, quarterfinal, semifinal. I don't mind that, but yeah, reading this here for Dana White, I don't like what I'm reading. To be honest with you, I just don't see that working. I think that boxing, is it perfect? Could we do with maybe having a look at certain things and tweaking a few things? Maybe. But like, if we're drastically changing it, and if you're trying to put a UFC spin on things, I think Dana White, his feet are not fully on the ground when it comes to boxing and what it is and what he needs to do. I don't think his feet are fully on the ground with this, but I could be completely wrong. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed the video, people. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. We will do a live tomorrow. Today is my birthday, so I planned on just going out for a meal later after I finish recording, doing a little session of recordings. And yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, people, if you could, smash the like button, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. Until next time. Peace.